We have been looking at the familiar Bond formula. Bond is given a mission. Bond seduces some ladies. Bond finds one special girl. Bond saves the day. Bond escapes and has some fun time with said girl. In Part 1, we explored the Connery-Lazenby era and found that while most aspects of the formula hold true, there are some instances when it slips a bit. Now let's shift our attention to the Roger Moore era and see how the formula fares. Here is what we should expect. Bond wins. Bond escapes from a doomed base. Bond is using a vehicle, usually a ship or boat. Bond is with the girl. Whoopee ensues, either overt or implied. On to more Bond. Get it? More Bond. Never mind. What we're going to look at is as follows: the baddie, the scheme, the girl, how Bond wins, the ending. Additionally, for the final scene, is Bond with the girl? Are they using some kind of vehicle? If so, is it on water? This is very common. Is there whoopee? If so, is it overt, implied, or impending? Heaven forbid that there is no whoopee. In the last video, I also made a tally of how many times major characters had their voices dubbed over, and it was quite a lot, with several voice performers returning for multiple films. I also made a list of suggestive names for girls Bond encounters. This is one of the famous Bond tropes, and sometimes it is really blatant. Pussy galore! Plenty O'Toole! Seriously, Austin Powers could barely parody that with names like Ivana Humpalot and Dixie Normus. Names like that were not far off from canon names in the actual Bond films. Now, finally meet Roger Moore, our new Bond, in his first outing. Live and Let Die came out in 1973. It took advantage of various aspects of the popular blaxploitation films of the time, moving away from global crime syndicates and maniacal leaders with grandiose plans for world domination. The baddie, Dr. Kananga, played by Yaphet Kotto, is the Prime Minister of San Monique, a small country in the Caribbean. Using facial prosthetics, he also disguises himself as Mr. Big, a powerful mob boss and drug lord in the USA. The scheme. Kananga has secretly been producing heroin from poppies grown on hidden fields in his country. As Mr. Big, Kananga runs a nationwide chain of restaurants in America, from which he plans to give away his heroin for free. His goal is to create more heroin addicts, and by giving his product away for free, he will bankrupt other drug lords and drive them out of business. Once that is accomplished, he will begin charging high prices for his heroin and reap the profits from the addicted masses he has cultivated. The girl. Kananga employs a fortune teller named Solitaire, played by Jane Seymour. Using tarot cards, Solitaire is believed to be able to know the future and to observe remote events. How Bond wins. The first step of Bond's plan is to recruit Solitaire. He does so by tricking her, using a deck of tarot cards that he has stacked in his favor to seduce her. Having lost her purity, Solitaire will no longer be able to use her mystical powers. As a result, Kananga will kill her. Fearing this, she agrees to work with Bond. Returning to the USA, they are captured by Kananga, posing as Mr. Big, who reveals himself. Kananga leaves with Solitaire, and Bond is taken to a farm to become food for crocodiles. Bond escapes, returns to San Monique, rescues Solitaire, and saves them both from becoming shark food. Food again. by forcing Kananga to swallow a compressed air pellet, which blows him up like a balloon and, well, blows him up like boom. The ending. Bond and Solitaire board a train for New York. While Solitaire lies in bed waiting for Bond to join her, Bond saves Solitaire from one of Kananga's henchmen, who has an artificial arm. They brawl for a while, and Bond disarms his assailant and throws him out a window and off the train. Bond moves to take his place with Solitaire, and the film ends with the laughing face of another henchman who was sitting on the front of the train. Is Bond with the girl? Yes, he is. Are they using a vehicle? Yes, they are on a train. If so, is it on water? No, it is on land. Is there whoopee? There soon will be, making this impending whoopee. It will happen off-screen as the credits begin to roll. I would rather have seen a bit of that than a dude laughing in my face. Getting laughed at in the face instead of enjoying whoopee is too similar to my real life. In 1974, audiences were treated to The Man with the Golden Gun. The baddie. The titular man with the fancy gun is Francisco Scaramanga, played by Christopher Lee. He is an assassin, and yes, his gun is golden. He also uses bullets made of gold, but claims to only ever load one bullet per job, because all he needs is one bullet. I wonder if it is because the bullets are expensive. The scheme. Scaramanga wants to challenge Bond to a duel? He considers it art, a clash of titans. He is also after a device called the Solex Agitator, which he will use with his solar power plant and a solar-powered energy beam to demonstrate destructive technology that he intends to sell to the highest bidder. He kidnaps Bond's assistant and uses her to lure Bond to an island lair where he can kill two birds with one stone. The girl, Mary Goodnight, played by Britt Ekland, is Bond's assistant. She is the one who gets kidnapped. Through some trickery, Bond was able to get the Solex Agitator to Goodnight and away from Scaramanga, but she had it on her when she was abducted. Whoops! How Bond wins. Following a tracking device hidden on Goodnight, Bond is able to find her on Scaramanga's island in Chinese waters. Scaramanga is delighted to meet his adversary, showing Bond his solar weaponry and explaining his scheme. While they are having lunch, Scaramanga challenges Bond to a duel on the beach. As they count off 20 paces, Bond flees and winds up in a funhouse inside Scaramanga's manor. Eventually, Bond is able to win the duel by posing as a mannequin of himself that Scaramanga had set up for his own practice. The assassin thinks the real Bond is fake, and 007 gets the drop on Scaramanga, ending his life. The ending. Bond retrieves the Solex Agitator device and escapes with Goodnight just as the island base explodes. The couple sail off on Scaramanga's Chinese junk. After fending off an attack by Scaramanga's diminutive manservant, Bond and Goodnight begin making love. As Bond answers a call from M, which he dismisses, hanging up on his boss to continue having a good night. Is Bond with the girl? Yes, extremely so. Are they using a vehicle? Indeed they are. They are aboard a Chinese junk. If so, is it on water? It is sailing in the sea near China. Is there whoopee? Very much so. Bond and Goodnight are basically disrobed and making whoopee in bed together as the credits begin to roll. Moving on, let's take a look at Roger Moore's next outing, 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me. The baddie, Carl Stromberg, is a reclusive megalomaniac, played by Kurt Jurgens. He wants to remake the world as his own undersea kingdom. after wiping out all life on the surface first. The scheme: using his supertanker, Liparis, Stromberg plans to capture nuclear submarines by gobbling them up. This tanker can hold up to 3 submarines, and Stromberg acquires British and Soviet vessels. This is similar to how Blofeld gobbled up spacecraft in You Only Live Twice. He will then replace the crews and use the nuclear weapons on board the submarines to destroy New York and Moscow, raising global tension and setting off a nuclear war that will destroy the surface world. Raising international tensions and blaming abductions on other countries is also similar to what Blofeld did in You Only Live Twice. Then Stromberg will use his underwater base, Atlantis, to establish a new civilization under the sea. Aiding Stromberg on land is Jaws, a giant man with razor-sharp metal teeth, played by Richard Kiel. The girl, Major Anya Amasova, played by Barbara Bach, is a Soviet KGB agent codenamed Triple X. At the beginning of the film, Bond killed her lover. They reluctantly work together to head off the end of the world, but Anya promised to kill Bond when the mission is complete, although she had been starting to feel affection towards him after he had previously saved her life. How Bond wins. Our heroes travel aboard an American submarine to better examine Liparis, but they are gobbled up by the tanker. Stromberg puts his plan into motion and prepares to launch missiles at his targets. He takes Anya with him as he leaves for Atlantis. Bond is able to get free and liberate the captured American, British, and Russian sailors. They go on to take control of the tanker, and Bond is able to have the submarines fire their missiles at each other, ending the threat of world annihilation. Bond then goes to Atlantis and rescues Anya, doing away with Stromberg in the process. Atlantis is sunk by torpedoes from the American submarine as Bond and Anya escape the exploding base in an escape pod. The ending. Now safe, Anya picks up Bond's gun and aims it at him, ready to keep her promise and avenge her fallen lover. Instead of doing that, she puts the gun aside and Bond and Anya embrace. When the Royal Navy arrives to recover the pod, the two spies are seen doing something intimate through a window. Their personal Cold War fully thawed and heating up. Is Bond with the girl? Yes, he is. Are they using a vehicle? They are in an escape pod. If so, is it on water? It is on the water, has been under the water, very much a water thing. Is there whoopee? There is definitely whoopee. It is obvious. I would even say overt. Next, for a change of pace, Moore takes Bond where no Bond has gone before. Space, in 1979's Moonraker. This film bumped the previously teased For Your Eyes Only out of rotation due to the massive success of the original Star Wars. Every studio suddenly wanted to cash in on the space craze. The baddie. Hugo Drax is a rich industrialist who wants to kill all human life on Earth and then repopulate the world using his own specially selected people kept safe on his space station. Drax is played by Michael Lonsdale. We also get to see the return of Jaws from The Spy Who Loved Me. The scheme. Drax Industries manufactures spaceplanes. This technology will prove extremely useful in executing Drax's plans. At a secret laboratory, Drax has been experimenting with rare orchids to produce a toxin that can kill people, but not harm other animals or plants. Using this toxin to make a nerve gas, Drax will launch 50 globes containing the nerve gas from orbit, dispersing it in the atmosphere and killing all human life on Earth. He will protect several dozen genetically perfect human specimens from all races by ferrying them to his secret space station using his company's Moonraker shuttles. When all remaining humans on the planet have died off and the nerve gas become inert, everyone will then return to Earth to create a master race, forming a new human civilization of Drax's design. This whole kill all people and make a new civilization sounds quite similar to the baddie's scheme from The Spy Who Loved Me, only with a space station instead of an underwater paradise. The girl. Lois Childs appears as astronaut/scientist Holly Goodhead. She is working at Drax Industries on loan from NASA, but is actually an undercover CIA agent. She might be the most credentialed Bond girl we have seen so far. How Bond wins. Bond encounters Goodhead while infiltrating Drax Industries, and subsequently learns she works for the CIA. They work together until she is captured by Drax's forces. Bond tracks the toxin's orchid origins to the Amazon jungle, locating Drax's hidden base there. Bond is captured by Jaws and taken before Drax, where Bond witnesses 4 Moonraker shuttles lifting off. There are 2 more, Moonrakers 5 and 6. Bond and Goodhead are reunited and locked in a room beneath the launch platform, but they escape before the exhaust from Moonraker 5 cooks them. Our 2 heroes disguise themselves as pilots and board Moonraker 6 in time to blast off. Drax's space station is hidden by a radar jamming device, but Bond and Goodhead disable it so that American space marines arriving in another shuttle can find them. A space battle ensues, reminiscent of the underwater battle in Thunderball. Drax prepares to launch his deadly globes, explaining his plans to repopulate the Earth with genetically perfect human beings, and Jaws realizes that not only Drax, but also he and his new girlfriend will not be included in the repopulation. Jaws changes sides and attacks Drax's guards. The Marines arrive, the station is destroyed, and Bond ejects Drax into space, ending him. Unfortunately, 3 globes have already been launched, but Bond and Goodhead are able to use Moonraker 5's laser to shoot them down in space. The ending. Jaws and his girlfriend had escaped the exploding base in an escape pod and make it back to Earth safely. Bond and Goodhead make love aboard Moonraker 5 in 0 gravity as it descends to Earth. A live video feed shows Bond's superiors, our 2 heroes, floating aboard the shuttle, and Bond prepares for re-entry. Is Bond with the girl? Yes. Are they using a vehicle? They are aboard a space shuttle. If so, is it on water? Nope, it is far above water, land, the entire Earth. Is there whoopee? We have another example of overt whoopee. Moore's Bond is more obvious than earlier iterations. This is probably due to the changing social mores and cinematic ratings of the times. Bond returns in For Your Eyes Only, as promised at the end of The Spy Who Loved Me, but delayed because of the rush to make a space outing. Better late than never. Hey, that could be a Bond title. Better late than never! The baddie. Bond's adversary this time is Aristotle Christatos, a former war hero who is now a smuggler. He is played by Julian Glover. Christatos starts off as an ally, but proves to be the main villain. The scheme. A device called an Automatic Targeting Attack Communicator, or ATAC, ATAC, has gone down with a British submarine. Interestingly, it looks like a typewriter and keyboard. Another ATAC, ATAK. Anyway, the race is on to recover this device, since it can be used to signal nuclear attack submarines. Will the Russians beat the British to it? Christatos, who also deals in opium and other criminal endeavors, wants the ATAC, presumably to sell it to the Russians. Coincidentally, Bond finds underwater mines, like the one that crippled the British submarine, suggesting Christatos was behind the sinking all along. The girl. The British government had asked Sir Timothy Havelock, a marine archaeologist, to locate the sunken submarine. He and his wife are murdered by hitmen sent by Christatos aboard their yacht. This is witnessed by their daughter, Melina, who vows revenge. Melina is played by Carol Bouquet. How Bond wins. After following lots of clues and going here and there, Bond is able to slowly put things together and understand who his friends and foes are. Finding Melina assassinating people involved with her parents' deaths, he eventually teams up with her and they recover the attack from the wreck of the submarine. Christatos is waiting when they surface and takes the device away. But our two heroes escape death and later make their way to an abandoned monastery where Christatos intends to complete the deal and hand the attack over to the Russians. Bond retrieves the device. Melina decides to put aside vengeance and not kill Christatos, but Christatos is ultimately dispatched by an ally of Bond's, Milos Colombo, played by Chaim Topol. The ending. Bond and Melina share a romantic evening aboard her father's yacht. They disrobe for some off-screen hijinks as Melina's parrot fields a congratulatory phone call from the British Prime Minister. Is Bond with the girl? Indeed, he is. Are they using a vehicle? They are on a yacht. If so, is it on water? That is where you usually find yachts, so yes. Is there whoopee? It is off-screen, but I can say yes. We have some implied whoopee, and the end credit scene seems to show Bond and Melina skinny dipping. In 1983, audiences were able to enjoy the Bond film with the most Austin Powers-type title, Octopussy. The baddie. An exiled Afghan prince named Kamal Khan serves as Bond's adversary in this outing. He is played by Louis Jourdan. He likes glittery treasures and playing backgammon. The scheme. Khan works with a corrupt Soviet general named Orlov. Orlov wants to expand the USSR's presence in Western Europe. This goes against the politics of the day, when some thawing was being seen in the Cold War. Orlov steals treasures held by the Kremlin and passes them on to Khan, who replaces them with fake ones and uses Octopussy's circus to deliver the real items to contacts in the West. Orlov replaces one such shipment with a nuclear warhead, set to explode during a circus performance at a U.S. Air Force base in West Germany. The hope is that European powers would blame the explosion on the U.S. as an accidental detonation, and then seek European disarmament, which would leave Europe more vulnerable to Soviet invasion. I guess all Khan gets out of this is more pieces for his collection. The girl. As mentioned, Octopussy runs a circus troupe. She is also a jewel smuggler and a very wealthy woman. Octopussy is played by Maud Adams. This character has a connection to Bond. Her father was a major who Bond arrested for treason. Bond allowed him to end his own life rather than face trial, for which Octopussy thanks him. His act allowed her father to go out on his own terms, and she appreciates that. They become allies, and more. How Bond wins. After toying with Khan at several meetings, Bond infiltrates the circus to find out what the scheme is, discovering the warhead. Bond then makes his way to the Air Force base as Orlov gives chase, with Orlov meeting his end at the hands and guns of border guards. Bond gains access to the base and, with Octopussy's help, deactivates the warhead. Khan is preparing to escape from his palace in India, with Octopussy as his captive. As he escapes in an airplane, Bond clings to the fuselage, disables the plane, and jumps with Octopussy to safety as the plane crashes into a mountain, taking out Khan. The ending. Bond and Octopussy recover from their adventure aboard her private galley. They lie in bed, kissing and embracing, as the all-female crew row the galley onwards, their leader helping them keep rhythm by repeating, "In, out, in, out." I wonder who else that chant may be helping. Is Bond with the girl? Yes. Are they using a vehicle? They are on a galley. If so, is it on water? It is floating along, propelled by oarswomen, definitely on water. Is there whoopee? There is whoopee, off-screen and implied. We now reach the final outing for Roger Moore. By this time, he was 57, making him the actor with the oldest performance in a final Cannon outing. By contrast, Connery finished his Cannon films at 41, and was only 53 when the non-Cannon Never Say Never Again came out. At 45, Moore was older than the departing Connery when he took over the role with Live and Let Die. Let's take a look at 1985's A View to a Kill. The baddie. Max Zorin is an industrialist who wants to get a monopoly on microchips. He is played by Christopher Walken. Zorin comes from a genetic experiment performed by the Nazis and has been trained and financed by the KGB. The scheme. Zorin plots to destroy Silicon Valley by using explosives under certain lakes along certain fault lines in California, triggering earthquakes and flooding the center of America's computer industry. Another bomb will be used to allow these fault lines to move at the same time. When Silicon Valley has been submerged, Zorin will emerge as the world's only supplier of microchips. His company can produce special chips that are impervious to EMPs, allowing devices using those chips to function after a nuclear detonation. This would be a huge defensive advantage to whatever countries have that technology. The girl. Tanya Roberts plays the granddaughter of an oil tycoon, Stacy Sutton. There are oil rigs on specific lakes that Zorin wants to use in his greater scheme. How Bond wins. Bond and Sutton infiltrate one of Zorin's mines and uncover the plot to use bombs to activate the fault lines. With the help of one of Zorin's abandoned henchwomen, Bond is able to dispose of the main bomb, thwarting that scheme. Zorin escapes on his airship with Sutton as his captive, Bond dangling below on a mooring line. Bond is able to tie the line to the Golden Gate Bridge, halting Zorin's escape. A fight between Bond and Zorin ends with Zorin plummeting to his demise. Bond and Sutton escape as the airship explodes. The ending. Russia wants to award Bond with a medal for stopping Zorin. Q locates Bond and monitors him with a little robot as Bond and Sutton become intimate in a steamy shower. Is Bond with the girl? Yes. Are they using a vehicle? Nope. He was on an airship, but he ends the film in the shower. If so, is it on water? There is no vehicle, but there is water, I suppose. Still, it's a no. Is there whoopee? Yes, I will say it's overt. Here are the tallies for the Roger Moore era. Bases were destroyed in 4 films out of 7. Bond ended the film using a vehicle in 6 films out of 7. 4 films ended with Bond on water. Moore's Bond achieved 100% by ending with the girl in all 7 films. He also got a perfect score with whoopee in 7 films out of 7. Additionally, these endings were more obvious than the ones in the Connery-Lazenby era. As for bonus information, there were no major characters with actors whose voices were dubbed over this time around. Some characters had their voices replaced, but none of them were major players. Regarding suggestive names, here are a few that might fit the trope. Mary Goodnight, Agent XXX, Holly Goodhead, BB Doll, Octopussy, Penelope Small Bone, Jenny Flex. We'll be back in part 3 with the Dalton and Brosnan films, plus one film that is non-canon. Thanks for watching. See you next time.